No matter how much we've tried to get better as a culture, the bulk of parenting has fallen on mother's shoulders. I'm Dr. Ken Wilgus. I'm a psychologist working with parents and teenagers for 30 years, and I wrote a book called Feeding the Mouth That Bites You, a guide to parenting teenagers and launching them into the world. And today I'll be answering frequently asked questions. So how should I discipline my teen? Okay, so Feeding the Mouth That Bites You basically talks about correcting a mistake that's been in our culture for over 100 years. And the most common mistake parents make is using childhood parenting techniques with teenagers. So you need to start by thinking about what you do for disciplining a teenager is not the same way you discipline a child. Teenagers, you want them to develop be able to manage themselves, responsibility. Children, obedience is still a good thing, but it's not helpful with teenagers. So with teenagers, a couple major things to keep in mind is that you need to be clear about what you're not trying to control. I call that a freedoms list. Before you start disciplining, you announce these are the things that we are no longer going to be trying to control in your life, because teenagers never think that you even think about that. So that then you set up a list, a clear list of these are the things that you're required. I don't think it's a contract. They don't need to sign it. But it's basically a promise that this is what we require of you, and these will be the consequences if you don't do it. The other thing to keep in mind is that with teenagers, you're not a policeman. You don't need to make sure these things happen. Your curfew is 10 p.m. By 10:05, you don't need to get out there and find them. You're a judge. And the judge sits back and says, well, let me look here at what the listing is. This will be the consequence. It's much more powerful if you make sure that they know that you control or have control over what they own, even the shirt on their back, and that you can, by deciding what they can have and not have, that's power. You're not a policeman trying to make sure these things happen. So make sure above all that you remember disciplining teenagers is not the same as you do with children. What are effective consequences and expectations for teens? Well, we'll talk first about expectations. Make sure your expectations are clear. I call it video camera terms, not take care of the living room and make sure that it looks nice. That's too vague. Your expectations need to be, this needs to be vacuumed and everything picked up before bed, that kind of expectation. Consequences, I'm a big fan of passive rather than active consequence. Active consequence means you have to go work in the garden for an hour. That means you'll have to monitor it, check it, all that stuff. Passive consequences are things like, obviously, taking away your phone, taking away car privileges. I'm a big fan of fining because it's not a huge thing, but it is a kind of consequence. But the sort of things that, remember that your main power with your teenager is that you own everything that they own. And so limited, not huge, but limited removal of those things that you provide for them is by far the most effective way of giving consequences. Remember also that for little expectation where they've gone over the rule, it's a little thing, don't be afraid to give a little consequence. An hour less of phone, $1 fine. Not everything has to be a big week-long grounding or whatever. You don't really try to give consequences that are coercion, like for after that they never did it again. You just want to make the road bumpier so that they'll hopefully choose to move their life car onto a smoother path, and that's the better way to do it. How should I talk to my teen about drugs and alcohol? Number one, you need to talk to your teens about drug and alcohol. Not so much just about information. You can certainly check and make sure that the school is doing what more schools do now and making sure they know the information. But you want to be clear about two things. First, what will your consequences be if you discover that they are using alcohol or drugs? Make sure they know that you realize you can't make them not use drugs and alcohol. You don't have that much control. But you also want to be clear, if we discover that you have been drinking or you've been where alcohol is being drunk, because they're not allowed to be there even if you're not, then this will be the consequence. And don't be afraid for that to be a mounting consequence. The first will be a week of grounding, and it could go up to even a month of grounding if we discover this. And then secondly, make sure they know that if it happens once, there'll be this consequence. If it happens again, or certainly a third time, you may be landing yourself into a therapist office to figure out what is going on that you can't keep from doing this at all. It's important that you keep a zero tolerance about what you will respond to with consequences, while being clear that they realize that you know that you can't make sure they don't do this, because you can't. You look more powerful in saying, we get it, that if you're super sneaky and we never discover it, then we can't, that you need to make those decisions yourself. But dude, if we do find out, this is what we're gonna do. That way they'll know that what the real consequence will be, without looking like you're trying to over control in something that they know you can't make those decisions for them. What are some practical tools for single parents raising teens? Great question. Most of the parents asking that are mothers. No matter how much we've tried to get better as a culture, the bulk of parenting has fallen on mothers' shoulders. So a couple of important things to think about is that as a single parent, you want to be the best mom that you can be, but you really don't want to try to be a mom and a dad, not for a teenager. They know that you're not a dad. If you're a dad, you want to be the best dad you can be and not fight with their mom, but really doing your role best. If you're a single mom, it's very important that you look for other trusted resources to deal with your teenagers. You need Christian men that are in the church, trustworthy women that you can rely on, so that you are both having your own needs met, but also parenting as the best mom or dad that you are, and teaching them about what that means to be a mom and a dad. Don't take on too much for you. Look for the help that God provides around you. I know it sometimes looks like there's not, but that's what churches are for and should be, a community that helps us to raise children when one or both parents aren't there, all that kind of thing. But with teenagers particularly, I think it's important that you take on the role of the parent that you are and help them to know even those limitations. Because again, these are young adults, and don't take on too much for yourself. Way too often, single moms take way too much pressure on themselves that it's all about how they've done or not done. I don't ever have single dads coming and worrying that they screwed their kids up. What does that mean? So be the best you can as the single parent that you are, trusting God to provide the rest of those needs. How can I improve my communication with my teen? The first thing, it depends on the problem you're having with communication. Our standard view of what we call teenagers, which is not old, assumes that your teenager is all surly, doesn't want to talk to you, and so forth. That's actually not true. If you spend time with teenagers like I have, you'll know that your teenager actually does want to talk to you. The most common reason that they don't communicate well is a control battle. And as you can tell that most of the things I talk about, you want to first be clear about giving some areas that, like say you want to talk to them about school. Then start by being clear, look, I've let you know that as long as your grade's this minimum, you manage it however you want. Make sure they know, for example, what the freedoms are, so that then that can reduce the control battle. It is really difficult to talk to a parent about my dating if I think that my parent is about to say, well, you can't see her anymore, and so be clear about what those freedoms are, and that can reduce the most common problem, which is a control battle. There's other types of problems that can be. Sometimes your kids just aren't good communicators. Sometimes big adult-looking boys just don't talk well about their feelings. And in those cases, be careful on kind of pitching your conversation with them so that it fits their what they can kind of talk to you about. It's just more like multiple choice questions. Just, well, do you feel happy about it? Or are you sad about it? But making those kind of adjustments are important. And keeping in mind that you cannot make your teenager talk to you. You can invite them, you can make it easier for them, and constantly making that effort. But you don't make them talk to you. You just make it as easy as they can, and then see how they turn out as the young adults that they are. All right, this is good. As a dad, how do I help my teen daughter grow up well? That's a great question. Dads are a huge part of teenage daughters. I don't care that she acts like she doesn't care about you. She does. I've talked to so many teenage girls. You're on stage. This is your time. You're a big deal. So you paying attention to her, at least by adolescence, is critical. It can even be just like, hey, let's go get coffee together, something that lets her know you want to spend time with her. And if she's surly about it, just say, that's fine. I'll make it quick. But doing stuff with her. Know about her. Know about her, the names of her friends. Let her know that you are a part of her life is a huge deal. Because I'll tell you this, that worry that you have that she's going to be sexually active and so forth, the primary antidote to a sexually active daughter, because girls are not eager for that. They are eager to know that they're loved. And how do I fit with adult men? You're the first guy in line to answer that question, because there's plenty of men behind you, but they will answer it in the positive, but they want something. You don't. So you spend your time with her, you make sure that she knows how valuable she is, and by your interest, your involvement, all of that, and that's a huge buffer for how she manages in the world of other adult men, which is what dating is. And it's critical that you do that. If you're behind, just jump in now. Let her know, I'm so sorry, I think I have been doing this wrong, but pick up now. And being involved with her is just the most important thing for teenage daughters. Whether it looks like it or not, she's watching you and watching whether you're watching her. As a mom, how do I help my teen son grow up well? I spend most of my time, that's the most common theme, is I talk to very good moms who are struggling with their teen sons. It's critical that for moms, especially you nurturing moms that are just good at taking care of what they need and all that stuff, you're gonna bump into a problem when your son needs to know, do you respect me? And your kind and loving language can sound to a son particularly disrespectful, even though you're not intending that. So it's very important that you start letting your teenage son know which things you're not in control of, but even more nuanced things. You're not only his mother, you're a woman, and he's a young man, and you need help from him. I had a mom just the other day who was talking about how things had changed hugely when she switched from, hey, go get the groceries out of the car, which took 12 to 15 minutes at least for him to even get around to it. And she switched to, hey, I need a strong young man like you to help me with these groceries. Would you please? And he liked it. He jumped up and he did it. The point is that you want to add in the adultness of your son and talk more about how you are as a woman. I don't want to criticize you. I don't want to tell you what to do, son, but I'm fearful of this. Making sure that he knows a little more about you and that you're responding to him as the young man that he is. And don't be hurt by his rejection of you. It's very common, especially those of you that were really close to your boy. He's not rejecting you because he doesn't love you. He just doesn't like you right now because you sound disrespectful. That's not your fault. It's a very common thing to talk through with him, and for you to know that what he's needing from you is respect, not that he doesn't want to spend any time with you. How do I help my depressed teen? You start with any affective issue, anxiety, depression, these kind of things, is by first determining how serious it is. If you're talking the kind of depression that is affecting their day-to-day activities, like actually making it difficult for them to go to school, not doing extra activities, things like that, that's a significant type of depression that you may very well want to seek help from a professional to at least evaluate. Same thing with anxiety. If they're not doing the main things of life, school, social activities, sports, the things they're normally involved in, if these affective states are affecting that, then you probably want to see a professional for an evaluation. Lesser levels like depression, remember that we've taught our teenagers more than ever to talk about their inner life. So they will use terms like depression when, I'm not kidding, 30 years ago, every teenager I talked to that was depressed would always say, no, I'm not. Now, teenagers do use that word, but they even sometimes use it incorrectly. So there is a kind of depression that is perfectly fine to talk about, but it doesn't mean that you need to panic. The idea that if I'm doing well, it'll because I have this teenager that is happy all the time and never expresses depression is unrealistic. Think about your own adolescence. Come on, 7th grade, really? You were fine the whole time? Levels of depression and even anxiety can be helped by spontaneously or spurring on discussion about how they're feeling, what they're doing. But it doesn't always mean that you need to do something huge about it. That's determined by if it's affecting their activities, school, and things like that. That's probably when you need to consult with a professional. I hope this was helpful. You're probably doing a better job of parenting than you think. There's a lot more information about what I talked about in the book, Feeding the Mouth That Bites You. There's also a lot of good information right here at this Focus on the Family resource. If you do like it, click like and subscribe and look at some of the other videos. There's lots of good stuff right here.